Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployer from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips. Give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Today, we're going to talk about unlocking potential, non-traditional teaching methods for students with severe learning challenges. And my guest is one of my co-hosts, Stephanie Buckwalter. Stephanie is a curriculum developer and the creator of the eLARP method for homeschooling students who are 2 or more years behind grade level in several core subjects, or simply stuck in perpetual kindergarten. She believes that the first step to homeschooling a special needs child is to assume intelligence. Once you realize there's more going on intellectually than your child can express, it opens up a whole new world of learning. Her family of 5 has done homeschool, private school, public school, including the IEP process. In addition to homeschooling for over 18 years, Stephanie has taught classes locally and online and helped start a robotics club, a classical education co-op, and a special needs homeschool co-op. Her heart is to use her unique experience to help others experience success teaching their unique learners. Welcome, Stephanie. You're on the other side of the microphone today. I'm interviewing you, but we'll be talking about some shows that actually Stephanie will be hosting this summer. I'm super excited to have you on our co-host team and once again on the show as a beloved guest in the past, too.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And this is one of my favorite topics to talk about because it's my life.
Yeah. And we become experts through experience and lots of trial and error. So Stephanie has a lot of that to share with you today. And I'm excited for all that you do have to share in this area. And I know we've gotten a lot of questions. We have a lot of viewers already popping on. If you're watching live, just make sure you know that you can put your comments or questions in the feed. And we also have saved all the questions you submitted ahead of time. And we are looking at getting those answered as well during our discussion. So if you submitted them ahead of time, just know we've got them all preloaded and ready to go. But Stephanie, why don't you tell us a little bit about why this is your life and how that looks right now, and give us a little background for our viewers who maybe don't know a lot of your story.
Okay. I have 5 children, and I've homeschooled all of them for at least half of their education, some of them all the way through. I have, one child who was gifted, 2 who were basically neurotypical, 1 who was had mild learning struggles, and then a special needs daughter who's got moderate ID, intellectual disability. So I've had a range to teach. And for me, my special needs daughter came at the end. And so I had tons of curriculum to try out. I wasn't, buying and shifting things around. And she was in public school for part of the time. And I used a lot of those hours she was in school to do research because she didn't have a specific diagnosis. I just knew there was a brain problem. So I went deep diving in neurology. We've run the gamut on problems. And when I started talking to Peggy about this interview, I basically came up with a list of all the areas that I've struggled in and said, ask me anything you want about these and I'll try to give a good answer.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a good place to start from. I know when I speak on subjects, I love speaking from where I had the questions because I found the answers in the most unique places. A lot of times it wasn't where I was expecting to find the answers. And a lot of times it comes through people and their experiences and when you can start relating to other people. And we forget that those connections, that those relationships are so important and also it's encouraging and it brings hope, because you realize, oh, they've been there, they've done that, they've made it through. They actually survived.
That was the part I forgot to add. My daughter is actually a senior this year. She's officially graduating homeschool.
Oh, that's amazing. Yes, that gives us all hope. And hopefully those of you that are watching there is an end. I mean, I know I finished homeschooling my kids. It was 2 years this month that we've wrapped up, and it's hard to believe that it ever ended, because I thought when we started in the beginning, this was going to be my entire life. There was no more me. It was everything about homeschooling, and how fast it goes by. I know it doesn't seem like it right now, if you're in the middle of it, but there is life after homeschooling, unless you have like 20 kids, maybe.
Well, I was thinking, I guess this is my official retirement, because my life, whatever my life is like now, it's like that the rest of my life.
Right.
But I am going to do, I call it homeschool college for my child who
Yes.
is more, he's not as severe. So we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of doing a homeschool college program with him. And for her, it's more like homeschool, I don't know what to call it,
Yeah.
homeschool life lessons school or
Just
something. But we're probably doing
right.
another 4 years, just like as if she was going to a training program of some kind, because she still needs the training. So we're done with homeschool officially, but we're not done with I still feel like I'm going to be homeschooling for a few years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And especially when you have kids at home that are still needing help. And a lot of our kids, we forget that, as even if we're not homeschooling officially, we are still a parent. And our kids walk some tough roads. And isn't it amazing that we can do that with them? If you didn't catch the episode last week that came out, so Stephanie and our other co-host, we did an episode on emotional health of special needs homeschooling moms. Really, really good episode. You got to catch that. And we all talked about, most of us have adult children that we are still struggling with, and walking through struggles with them. And so, yes, even though the schooling has ended, it doesn't mean we've stopped parenting.
But don't
So,
let that discourage you. There's still a lot of hope for
oh,
the
yes,
things we're going to talk about
absolutely.
today.
And there's so much to learn and so much to grow together in. I still, even though it's hard a lot of the times, it's I'm realizing that God's using it to refine me even more, and I'm thankful for that. And so, yeah. So, yeah, let's dive into this subject. And definitely, if you want to learn more about that discussion we had previously, you can just check out our YouTube channel. It actually just came out, the podcast just came out today. So that's something you can check out too. But as we come into the subject, let's talk first about what it means by a traditional method, since we're talking about non-traditional methods, just so we know kind of what we're not talking about.
Okay. The traditional methods are the things you hear over and over, or if you go look up homeschooling methods, they'll appear on this list. They're things like Charlotte Mason method, classical education. I know Robinson curriculum was one that made those lists for a while. What are some other ones, Peggy?
So like well, a lot of people use certain textbook programs, like the school in a box, or maybe an all comprehensive online curriculum, or a video based curriculum. And so a lot of those, they're more defined by their curriculum companies that create those, because
Right,
they
like
all have kind of a
Abeka,
different flavor.
Beautiful Feet.
But it's anything you can buy prepackaged. That's what we want our food. That's what we want our curriculum. Unfortunately, we got to go back down to the basic elements of of nutrition and build from there with a lot of our kids.
Right. We got to start with the fundamentals, and most curriculum is long past the fundamentals by the time you're out of elementary school.
Yes.
So our kids get
Yeah.
caught in perpetual elementary school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the traditional curriculums are their traditional methods, and then the curriculum are, I'm sorry, I was talking over you, but things like
No.
Abeka, Beautiful Feet.
Right.
They all escape me at the moment. But they have, all 12 years laid out for you, book after book
Right.
after
Like
book.
BJU Press and
Yes,
a lot of
those
places like
kind.
that. Yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
those are the traditional methods, and you use traditional teaching methods with those.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that also affects a lot of traditional teaching methods, unless it's not a traditional method, but it's a common one, it's called unschooling, where you kind
Yes.
of let the
Mm-hmm.
child lead. So that's
Yep.
also, I would consider that a traditional teaching method, only because so many people use it and it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, car schooling, game schooling, road schooling, all those
Oh
kind of
yeah.
things, which
Mm-hmm.
are getting closer to what we're talking about and what we'll need to do for our kids. But the other thing that happens is a lot of times our view of school and education is so informed by the public school system and how they work that it's really, really hard to break away from that. And I know a lot of the questions we got were, and we're going to talk about this, were about
Yeah.
being behind, how do I catch up, and all that stuff. That's kind of tied to our traditional model of education, where you have to learn so much information every year to pass to the next grade, and then when you graduate, you're the complete package. So
Mm-hmm.
our
Right.
complete packages at graduation are not going to look like those. Just heads up. So no matter how hard
I
you
think that
try.
scares a lot of people too, is that they're like, well, I can't graduate my child because it doesn't look like that. But it's nice that you say that, because I think we just need to hear it. It is okay.
Yeah. Fair warning, you will hear a lot of hard things today.
Mm.
And I'm going to cry because I had to learn them too. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
here we go.
Okay. All right. So, so what about that mindset that we bring in? That you were talking about that in just this, last sentence was, this mindset that we have to have all these graduation requirements met. What are some other things in addition to that we have to completely get rid of, as far as, these are the standards that our child has to live up to? Or that we have to teach to.
One of the things is the idea that education only looks one way, or it
Yeah.
looks similar everywhere.
Right.
The idea behind, I don't want to get into this topic very deeply, but the whole
Yeah.
purpose of public school originally, and I think you interviewed someone on this, or you're going to, right? About this topic. I thought I saw something coming up, or maybe it was an article on your website. But the public school model was taken from, I believe, Prussia. And the whole purpose was to teach kids the same thing and
Right.
to, I hate to say this, but make good factory workers, because they needed factory workers. They need them all trained.
Right.
And
Yeah.
to teach them to follow directions, to do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not a very noble reason for education. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why homeschooling was reinvigorated in the 1970s, because that model just wasn't working for a lot of people. And the people running the system were kind of running in a different direction than
Yeah.
the
Right.
people, than the homeschoolers at the time wanted. And so that's kind of how our homeschool movement developed. And now it's matured to the point
Mm-hmm.
where there's so much curriculum to choose from, and there's so much to do. But with our kids, it's very difficult to get away from that mindset of that's what school should look
Yes.
like. We have
Mm-hmm.
to embrace the differences, embrace.
Right.
I have a friend who wrote a book. I'm going to interview her. She's one of the people I'm going to interview later this year, I think in August. And she wrote a book, and her book was about how God was teaching her to embrace certain things with a special needs child and release certain things. And so her whole book is embrace, release, embrace, release.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And that's kind of what we have to do with school. It'd be easier for me to answer that question if we talked about specific things, and then I can kind of follow that as we go.
Yeah. But I think it's good to have that overall picture, that it's just not going to be what you picture it's going to be. No matter, if you come in with, well, we're going to get rid of the public school model, but you still have some of those things that linger underneath. And it's like we talked about in the episode with the emotional health, the guilt and the feeling like you've got to do it all and be it all for your child, or else you're really going to mess them up. And all these things feed these things that we do, and we don't realize it. So I think just coming into this conversation and saying, these are the things we need to pay attention to, because this is what's driving what we're doing, instead of what is really important for your student and what needs to happen in your home, and for really helping them to get the most potential, which we're talking about today. It's
right. I guess that's a good
unlocking that potential.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Is the public school system and that model, and a lot of even homeschool curriculum, is designed to produce a specific result, and that is to either go on to further their education or to go into the workplace. Most of our kids, that's not their future, and so that education isn't appropriate for them. So I am giving you permission to do what you want. That's right. Of course, you still have to stay within your state guidelines. I always like to say that. I'm not telling you to ditch the law, but you have my permission personally to do what you need to do. And we can talk about a lot of those things as we go through the conversation today.
Yeah, I love that, because I remember the when I first started teaching, the curriculum that I used, it was very flexible. But that is exactly what the creator of the curriculum said. And it gave me this like release to go, okay, I don't have to do it all, the way that the public school did it. And it's okay. I can let go. If there's something in there that just doesn't fit my child, doesn't fit me, my personality for teaching, it's okay. Just let it go. And I lived by that mantra my entire homeschooling years. And it gave me so much peace that I think I wouldn't have had that not been told me. So listen to what Stephanie's saying, take it to heart, and write it on something if you need it to remind you later.
Well, I will. I think this would be a good time to say, okay, if that's not what you're not going for that area, what are you going for? And I had that same struggle.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I do have it. It's up there on my wall, but I don't want to stand up to get it.
No.
I was desperate. My daughter, she wasn't learning. I was like, what's the point? What's the point of homeschooling if she's not going to, have this traditional route after high school? So what's her purpose in life? I was like, this was despair. Okay. I was in the slough of despond. For Pilgrim's Progress. That's where I was. And I decided I'm just going to start reading the Bible until I get the answer, because I didn't know what else to do. Thankfully, the answer was in Genesis chapter 2. I didn't have to read very far.
You didn't have to make it too far.
I was like, and there were 3 things that stood out to me. I always have to read them directly, because otherwise, I can't remember them exactly. It's verses like 15 through 18. So it's only even a few verses. And it said, the Lord God took the man and put him in the garden of Eden to work it and keep it. We were created for work. Therefore, we teach productivity. And I have this little graphic, and I don't have one. I'll grab it in a little while. Too bad we don't have sponsors. I could grab one up while you do the commercial. And so we were created for work. And so we teach productivity. Academics is a part of that, but it's only a small part of that. And then it said, and he commanded him, you may surely eat of every tree in the garden, but of the knowledge of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat. So we were created for self-government, which I consider independence, which is responsible use of self-government.
Love that.
So that was the third thing. So independence, productivity, and then the other one says, it's not good for the man to be alone. I'm going to give you a wife. Now that's talking about a husband-wife relationship, but that's the foundation of society and all relationships is the home. And
Right.
that's where our kids are, they're in the home. And so because we
Mm.
were created for relationship, we teach social connection.
Yeah.
Those are the three things you're shooting for in the big sense. So your curriculum may or may not look like anything like what you need. You'll also want to, I know everyone's just like saying, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because there's, because what
Or
you're
how do
going
I
to be
meet my
asked,
state standards by doing that? Yeah.
right? Because what you're going to be asked to prove to the state is, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. Those could be very slow in coming.
Yeah.
So you need something to teach beside those because you can spend years teaching some of those concepts. But
Absolutely.
that's the big goal. And I have a graphic of this, and I can give a link to it for your show notes if you'd like.
Notes. Yeah.
And it's the graphic with all the little circles, and it has all the things that fall into each of those 3 circles. And that's kind of the big picture of what we're teaching our kids.
Right. I love that. It simplifies it in our brain. It instead of getting these huge lists of what my child needs to learn by this grade and this grade and this grade, and it's like it seems like this whole overwhelm because all of a sudden then we start marking off never, never, never instead of like those bigger pictures like you're talking about, and those other things just all fall in place underneath if they're supposed to. And I think we forget that.
Can I turn off my camera for just a second to grab it so I can show it?
Yeah,
I think it would
absolutely.
be helpful. Okay, just a minute.
Yes. All right. Okay, so Stephanie's going to grab that real quick, and
that was it. It was just on the wall. I have it on my.
Awesome.
It's on my office wall. So I'm going to try to hold this up. But this is I have another website, Art of Special Needs Parenting, where you teach. There we go. Independence.
Yep.
So and there's the things that fall under social connection and productivity, and then some other things. But that's really what it comes down to. These are the 3. I call them the 3 circles of purpose. That's really what we're working toward. So no matter how well they do or don't do in academics, this is really the core. This is why we were created. And if you teach the things on this little bookmark, then you're a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, that's a good place to start before we start getting into kind of the ins and outs and just the everyday types of things, because you have that overarching picture of what, or really the aim, the goal, the finish line, right? Well, never really a finish line, but we're getting there. That's where we want to be, especially when we're trying to wrap up the schooling time for our student. So, yeah.
Right. You can get you may not ever cross a finish line with your child, but there are definitely milestones you can cross and celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you get the most questions about from parents? What is your biggest one that seems to be the most asked question, especially for parents who have students with intellectual disabilities and they're homeschooling or thinking of homeschooling?
Everybody wants to know what curriculum to use because they're on the curriculum carousel. If you've been homeschooling any amount of time, you have lots of curriculum because you tried stuff, it didn't work. You tried stuff, it didn't work. Nothing's really working. So it's what's the right curriculum? Each piece of curriculum you buy is based on a scope and sequence of teaching. If you look at the table of contents, that's your scope and sequence. What you have to do for your child is create your own scope and sequence for the year based on the child's likely progress. And I just wrote a blog post actually about progress, how to calculate progress.
Yeah.
Let me switch over here, and it's on the eLARP learning site if you want to. I only have one blog post and this is it. So if you want to do
it should be easy to find.
You can just go to blog and it's the only post there. But let me talk about this for a minute. The reason curriculum is not working is because your child isn't working at grade level and they're not covering anywhere near
Right.
enough of, not making enough progress in the curriculum. They need more practice, more work, more explanation, things broken down smaller. It's a whole different way of teaching. Oh, my blog's not coming up, my blog post for some reason. Oh, well. Because
Well,
I
it's
wanted to get the numbers.
elearnlearning.com. And yeah, we'll make sure we get that link also in the show notes.
Well, the reason is because there's some numbers on there that I was going to share. Oh, there we go. Okay, it came up. I just had to open the window more for some reason. Didn't like it. Okay, so for example, to gauge your child's, I call it neurological age. Sometimes people call it brain age. So if a child is in 7th grade, they're about 12 years old. If they are working at 75% of their neurological function, then they're of their brain, of their neurotypical peers,
Right.
then they're working at about a 9-year-old. They're 12 years old physically, but they're 9-year-old neurologically. So their current grade level is about a 4th grade level. At the end of the year, they will only have progressed to 3/4 of the way through the 4th grade level year. Now that's at a child who's functioning at 75%.
Right.
But if you go down and they're only functioning at 40%, okay, that one's kind of depressing. I'll do 60%. If they're only functioning at 60%, if they're age 12, that means they're about 7.2 years old mentally, intellectually, not intellectually, I would say mentally, functionally. It's not even mentally, because I have a whole thing on intellectual disability. I don't believe is about IQ. It is not about how intelligent your child is. It is all about your child's neurological organization. And if the brain is not organized, your child won't be able to function well.
Yeah.
I believe they all have the potential to learn, and they all have a lot more intelligence than they can express because of the way their brain operates. That's a whole other discussion we can have sometime. But back to this one. So 7th grade, 12 years old, 60% function. So at the beginning of the year, they're functioning at about a grade level of 2nd grade, like 2.2, 2nd grade, a couple of months into the 2nd grade year. By the end of that year, they will only be toward the end of 2.8. Okay, that's their grade level at the end. In 8th grade, they'd start at 2.8, they'd end at 3.4. So for 7th and 8th grade, for your child, if that's their grade level, they're only going to progress through 1 year of curriculum. So you have to adjust everything you do to that. Now, finding the curriculum to do that is another challenge.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about that too. But I know a lot of parents did have questions who submitted those ahead of time. Like one had asked specifically this question for high school. And so I'm assuming that they would then go down and figure out, as far as where the intellectual level of the student grade level, that would be how they would actually start looking at levels. But then what about like recording for high school credits and those types of things? I know that's usually a huge question. I'd love for you to just answer a little bit of how that's all worked into that equation.
Okay. Well, since the title of this had severe learning struggles in it, I'm assuming that everyone listening to this is listening because they're thinking about a special needs child with moderate to severe disabilities. Chances are they will not qualify to receive a standard diploma. If you go to your state's website, it will describe to you what kind of diplomas are offered for high school. A standard diploma requires, the 4 years of English, the 4 years of math, or 3 years of math, however your state defines it.
Right.
And that's a standard diploma. Now, some states will offer alternate diplomas for special needs, or certificates of completion, or, different states call it different things and they have different requirements. So in one sense, you don't have to worry about that. Now, in my state, for the reporting purposes, for the, notice of intent and then the end of year evaluation, since my daughter isn't going to test anywhere near grade level, what we do is our state offers the option to have an evaluation. And then at the end, the evaluator says, yes, this person has met requirements in,
Right.
and they actually give a lot of detail, kind of like an IEP would. That's
Mm-hmm.
what's required in our state. But our state only requires that we report on language arts and math. So we don't have to worry about any of those other subjects as far as reporting. So the
Yeah.
answer to that question is really, it depends on what your state website says, your state education website says. That's what kind of degree you can offer, you can get for your child. So it's not, chances are, if they're moderate to severe, it's not going to be a standard diploma.
Right. Yep. So there's standards of diplomas that that for non-traditional students, and so that makes sense. And then, like you said,
So,
the state law will dictate some of the subjects required to cover. But then, I mean, really, it's what the child needs. Then it falls back to those categories you were talking about before that help them to be able to meet the goals that you have for them.
and I do want to say something else. If your child is moderate, but things change at the last minute, as you're going through school, and your child starts having leaps and bounds in abilities and cognitive awareness and
Mm-hmm.
building skills. I know that happens a lot in the autism community with
Yeah.
these kids who are learning using spelling to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
They've been in severe classes, contained classrooms in the public school. All through school, they learn to spell to communicate, and they have a perfectly funcking brain. That's why I never give up on a child with intellectual
Right.
disability, and think
Absolutely.
so. When they learn to communicate, several of them went on to get college degrees. So you don't
Yeah.
have to, if your child isn't there today, that doesn't mean they can't get somewhere like that in the future if
Right.
just a few things change.
Right. Yep. Yep. There's a lot of things to be thinking of when it comes to that. And um, so as far as like then using the curriculum, what um,
That
what
one's
do you do? I mean, do you just follow it? I mean, or are there
well,
certain things you're going to have to do to change?
well, you're going to have to adapt it. So, you've already been on the curriculum carousel. One thing you can
Mhm.
do is instead of using curriculum, you can
Mhm.
use books that kind of tell you what you should learn year by year. I have several of them. Now, these are really old, so you may not even be able to find these anymore. But one of
Uh,
them is Homeschool Learning Year by Year
hmm.
by, let me see who that is, Rebecca Rupp. There's also What Your Child Needs to Know When. And
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, this is the beginnings of, let me see, one of these. Oh, no, this next one. Okay. And that one's by Robin Scarlatta. And then there's Skills Evaluation for the Homeschool. And that's
Hmm.
another one of those. They have newer books than this. You can just look up homeschool, what my child needs to know every year, things like
Right.
that. But this one, if I'm not mistaken, let me look at this. This was the beginning of the Weaver curriculum.
Okay.
This is their whole program in book form back in the day. So you can
Wow.
find things like that. You can also start with books like this, like Family Math. You can
Hmm.
still find
Mm-hmm.
this in the U section, homeschool curriculum. If you do not have this book, I highly recommend it. This is by Judy
Yes,
Monday,
Judy Monday. She's been on
and
a
it
show a couple times. Yes.
is now she says in the beginning of this book that this is really her experiences with mild disability children,
Mhm.
not moderate or severe. So this book is specifically designed for them, but there's a wealth of information in here. And she's in her 70s now, and
Mhm.
this is her life's work of working with special needs kids in a book.
Yes.
And the other thing you can do is something like, if you once you get and these are the kind of things you do after you get the fundamentals, or you can figure out what the fundamentals are from those kind of books. And then
Mhm.
once they have the fundamentals down, they can start doing things like Learn Math Fast System. And that's like 4 volumes
Mm.
that takes you through all of math. My son was very weak in math, and so we're busting through that for his homeschool college
Ah.
to pick up any things that he's weak in. And
Mhm.
so there are curriculums you can use that can be sped up, but without the fundamentals, still that curriculum's not going to help. So I'm going to give you a list
Right.
of words that give you options on how to adapt curriculum that fit your
Yeah.
needs. It's a long list, but these are the different things, because this could be a whole topic by itself. As a matter of fact, any
Oh,
of these
yeah,
things we talk about could
absolutely.
all be their own
Hmm.
topic. But so these are the things you can do with curriculum that is sort of working. You can adjust, modify, accommodate, adapt, reduce the number of problems that you give, simplify whatever is there, slow down, just teach it slower, do shorter lessons, break one lesson into two
Right.
or three or four or five, depending on how many.
Uh-huh.
Because some concepts, like I was talking to someone who was trying to teach her child um, estimating. And as we talked through what he was struggling with, we realized, well, if he had a concept of greater than and less than, that's kind of a precursor skill indirectly for
Right.
estimating, because you have to
Hmm.
be able to see the difference. And so we
Right.
backed him up, you know, to greater than less than. He got that, and then move on to. So there are things like that where if they're not getting it, just keep backing up and backing up, or
Mm.
making the thing smaller and smaller until you get to where they're like, oh, because I have a whole nother thing
Right.
about stress that we need to talk about, the
Yeah.
levels of stress in homeschool. But let me finish this list. Okay. So that was shorter
Hmm.
lessons, smaller
Yes.
chunks of info, review. And I know someone asked a question about how often do you review? We can talk about that
Yes.
separately.
Hmm.
Knowing your teaching style, your child's learning style helps. If you're familiar with the 8 great smarts, knowing where your child is smart, because sometimes if they're
Hmm.
a visual person and it's an auditory exercise, you can switch it to a visual one. So knowing
Right.
those things, I know it's just more to learn. I'm sorry, parents. I can't make that any better for you. I've had to
Well,
do the same
I think
thing.
that's good to remind us, though, that this is as much of a learning curve for us as it is for our children.
It
And we're
is.
going to just have to, we have to learn. And it's going to make you a better person. You're going to understand a whole lot more. So just go for the ride.
Embrace that life of learning you have. You have.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Our kids learn by example anyway. So if you embrace it, they'll embrace it more.
ooh, that hurts.
Yeah.
Because I haven't always graciously embraced all this stuff.
Oh, I know.
Um, so white space. I had one mom who took the book she was teaching her child to read and took the text out of the book, retyped it, made the font really big, printed it, and her daughter could read just fine. But
Wow.
if she was in a book with pictures, with all the
Mhm.
things in the small font, she couldn't read it. And over time, over the course of the school year, she reduced the point size on the text,
Mm,
and now her daughter can read in the books.
that's
But
amazing.
things like
Yeah.
that. So white
Mhm.
space, and think
Yeah.
mental white space, physical white space,
Right.
emotional white space, space.
Mhm.
They need a
Yeah.
lot of space. They need
Yeah.
downtime. You can, adjust downtime, nutrition, give more frequent
Mhm.
breaks, add movement to their day, have a shorter school day to give them time for processing.
Right.
Um, and I like to think in terms of, I call it FID, frequency, intensity, and duration.
Mm.
At one point, my son wasn't reading, and he was in 4th grade, and his brothers were catching up, and he was all anxious because his brothers were going to pass him up at school.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it was a good motivator.
Mhm.
So, but what we did was we dropped all the other subjects except at a surface level, and just focused with frequency, intensity, and duration on learning to read.
Mm.
And he was reading by the end of that exercise. He was in 4th grade and was really reading at a 1st grade level. By
Mm.
the end of the 4th grade year, he was reading at a 3rd grade level. Over summer, he picked up the 4th grade, and by the end of 5th grade, he was right where he should have been.
Hmm.
But it's because I believe we focused on that. It's okay to push other things aside or do them minimally,
Mhm.
to really focus on the things that are important to you, because that's another topic I was going to talk about, like what's important to you, that has to be worked into your homeschool.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a question from
That's,
Linda about can you catch children up if they're behind? And I think that's a sometimes thing, and it's what you were talking about. But that's a neurodevelopmental concept, is that frequency, duration, and intensity. And it's been proven, like study wise, to work. And so, but you have to get that buy-in from your child, which I think was the precursor to you talking about that too, because he was motivated to do it. If your child's not motivated, it can sometimes be a more defeating process if you're just hammering in and trying to increase the intensity and the duration and all of that. And then they're going to feel like I'm just a failure because that's all we're doing and I'm still not getting anywhere. So there's some things to play around with that too.
That's a good point, because those are my last two things. Look at their neurological readiness and that it's developmentally appropriate. For him, he was borderline ready for this, but that extra motivation kicked him over the line, because we've done other things over time since then that he didn't have that motivation for, but he's just so self-defeated for having so many struggles for so long.
Wow. Yeah.
That we had to, it took many, many approaches to teach certain things, but eventually you find one that works. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer than that. There are no quick answers, no quick solutions
There
to that.
aren't. Yes, I know. And we feel guilty. I think that we need to stop and talk about this, because we feel guilty when we don't get the answer right the first time or the second time or the third time. And we're ruining our child by trying all these things. But if, as I've prayed through a lot of those things, God has just said, I did not give you the answer for a reason. And, to be accepting of his timing and his will. And I chose what was best, of what I thought was best, of what would work best. And I was faithful to do what I had in front of me. And my child too. There was lessons to be learned, and maybe it wasn't a successful lesson in the way that I wanted to see it, but it still was successful with the way that God planned it.
Yeah, I don't know if I struggled with guilt as much as I did just overall discouragement. Like, really, this doesn't work either,
Right.
kind of thing. But there is a level of guilt as they get older. You think, oh, am I doing the right thing? Should I have done more? Can I do more? And we've only got so much to give in a given day with these kids, and especially if you have other kids, that's something you have to learn as a special needs parent.
Yeah,
is that balance of what can I realistically give to this child and what can I expect in return. I think we put expectations on ourselves and our children because of that I got to get caught up thing.
Right.
And I'm not judging anyone who says that, because I do the same thing, and I did it for years. And when my child was younger, I want to do a whole talk one time. Maybe we could do this on the different stages you go through as your child ages, on how you get education. Maybe we could do a group discussion on that.
That would be a really good group discussion with the co-host. Yes.
And one more thing here, because I know SPED Homeschool offers a download of an IEP, a homeschool IEP type thing. And I know that makes some people cringe, because I went through the IEP process many times. So I know how cringy it is. But the purpose is, when something like this, when you find something that works, or if you've evaluated your child, knowing their strengths and weaknesses and their learning style and your teaching style and all the things, if you write that down, when you do hit a roadblock in learning, then you can look at that list and say, oh, is there something here? And you'll be surprised how many times, if you've done that work to put that profile together, or to write those goals in IEP and then document, all the things that work, how often you can go back to that list and say, oh, I bet if I just change this, make it easy on yourself. Do that. Do that exercise. And I can help you. I will. That could be the challenge. I don't know if you want to talk about this now, but SPED Homeschool.
No, let's talk about this, because we have a brand new website that's launching Saturday. And on there, it's a peer-to-peer support, but also there's going to be some behind in more, they're going to have the option of upgrading. And actually, we have a code coming out on our email list for 3 free months, or if you're going to be at a conference, this summer with us there. We'll give out that code too, that you'll get access. But Stephanie's going to start a group with some challenges on there that you can get some personal support even in through that group, or be able to connect with others who are walking the same walk with you. So so tell us more.
Okay, well, they're actually two separate things. They're actually three
Yeah.
separate things I'm going to do on the platform, because I have my own, website and all that.
Right.
But on the SPED Homeschool website, what I want to do is I'll start a group for parents of kids with intellectual disabilities, or I can call it, they're caught in perpetual elementary school, because that's really what happens, regardless of diagnosis.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing, is just the group. And then in July, maybe into August, I'm doing a series of challenges to help you prepare for the school year. And one of them I will do, based on this conversation, is I will do putting together that student profile. And that's open to everyone. And if you gave you the code and everything. But we can do one on creating that profile so that you have that to reference when things start going sideways. And when you it's amazing when you write it down and have it available through the year, how much that helps. And then the third thing is, if you ever heard me talk before, I almost always mention my daughter's OT, who helped me with the listening program and got her talking and all these different things. We reconnected because I was going to interview her as a co-host. I was going to interview her, and we reconnected, and we decided, she homeschooled her two boys, and she's been an OT for over 35 years, and she wants to kind of get back working with the homeschool community again. So we are going to do a show. It'll be a Zoom call, but a show called 3 Questions and a Mug. And that's what you bring. You're going to relax in front of your computer, and you bring your 3 questions for us and a mug of your favorite beverage, and we will just answer questions. We're going to start doing it once a month, and we'll see how that goes over the summer, and then maybe we'll change it in the fall.
Very cool. Yes. Just that ongoing community support, and, getting to know people. I mean, if you have that thing on a regular basis, I think when we start to get to know other people's stories, and you kind of let our guard down instead of just one-time things where you're going, oh, that's great, I get some information, but we really aren't seeking information more than we are seeking connections. And
that's what I'm excited about, because that's your whole point of starting this new platform, is for the connection part of it. And
exactly.
So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing those all get going, and we will definitely be promoting those. And we'll make sure to get the links in the show notes too, so that even if you're watching this later, you'll be able to find that right away. So good stuff. So we kind of did answer the step-by-step question on how to do curriculum. You basically, because Michelle had said, I just don't have time to plan things out. But you kind of answered that a little bit previously when you were talking about just, there isn't a step-by-step way to methodically do it.
Well, but based on all these things that we had on our list, I've actually started creating a curriculum, and I was calling it a teaching kit, but really what it is, it's an adapted unit study. So right now they're called teaching kits, but I'm going to change the name. I just decided that when, preparing for this. They're adapted unit studies. The idea being that they work at different levels, and they cover a lot of information. So whether your child they're really designed for the older kids who need to play catch up, so that they can get the basics of information. Because my philosophy for teaching our kids is that when my daughter graduates, I want her to be able to, even before, follow a conversation, even if she's nonverbal. And by the time she would type anything into an iPad, the conversation's passed her up. But to be able to intellectually participate and learn from a conversation, because she has the foundational knowledge that she needs. For example, one of the adapted unit studies I have is on the human body. So not only does it teach about the human body and the different systems at a very high level, it also teaches how to recognize pain in your own body. So it's kind of life skills and all that. Right. I'm working on developing those. I'm sorry they're not there yet, but you are the parent I am looking at. I'm looking at you when I'm creating those, and I'm looking back at me, because that is what happened to us. I want that for our children. I want them to be
Yeah.
able to participate and to understand what's going on around them, because so often with an intellectual ability, and especially slow communication or no communication, they just get
Mhm.
passed over. And they probably have millions of
Right.
questions. I have a grandson who's 5 right now,
Mm.
who's 4, and they're grandchildren are 2 and 4. And the
Uh-huh.
4-year-old has tons of questions, and I see my daughter looking at him when he's asking questions and waiting for those answers. So one of the things we have to
Oh,
do
wow.
as parents of kids with intellectual disabilities, especially if they're nonverbal, is think of those questions that they might have
Yes.
about whatever it is you're teaching, and
Right.
model the thinking skills it takes to
Mm.
answer those questions. Because if you think about it, thinking skills are what bring you independence. And remember, one of our 3
They
circles of
do.
purpose is
Yeah.
independence.
Mhm.
Thinking skills and problem solving. Because if your child can't problem solve, that's when parents get so concerned that their kids can't live on their own, because what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? So you have to
Right.
give them the tools, and that's what you're doing all through homeschool, asking, what to
Mhm.
teach, what curriculum to use. Use the curriculum of life and teach them thinking
Yes.
skills,
Absolutely.
social skills, independent, and something that they
Mhm.
can do productively after they graduate. My daughter's interested in fashion. We're still exploring those things. She likes doing art and all that
Yeah.
stuff and crafty stuff. So I'm trying to find ways to incorporate that into our lives. That's not my love of life. So I'm trying to find
Right.
ways for her to do that. And she's got issues. So it's not like she's ever going to do any of these projects on her own at this point, maybe down the road. But I'm hoping to find things she can do more on her
Yeah,
own.
or find somebody that is passionate about it, that will share it with her and has the heart and the patience. And, God can provide those things. And
That's a
um,
good reminder.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's Kelly had asked one question too. And I think this kind of pertains to that. She says, does my special needs homeschool child need more than me to help him succeed since he's constantly several years behind grade? I hesitate to ask help from the school system. It doesn't have to be the school system. It can be other people too. I think we forget though, because we do think it's all about us and all about us, but we need to surround ourselves with community too. And I know we talked about that a lot within our community here at SPED Homeschool and Empowering Homeschool Conversations too, is that you can't be it all. You have to have that help and that support.
Right. And the same thing is, again, it's that fear of being behind. It's the FOMO.
Hmm.
Okay. There is no FOMO
Yes.
in special ed. Okay. Don't just get rid of it. Get rid of it. It's not there. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing.
Right.
It shouldn't be a thing, but it is. I know it realistically it is for all of us. I guess at some point I had to come to accept the fact that I wasn't ever going to catch up. And so I needed to pivot and work on
Oh, I like that word.
those
Yeah.
3 things, those
Yeah.
3 circles, because that's what was going to make her a complete person. Remember, education
Mm-hmm.
in our typical education system is designed to produce workers for the workforce so that they can be self-supportive and then raise their own
Right.
families and continue the thing. Our kids aren't
Hmm.
on that track. So we
Right.
need to rethink what homeschool looks like for our kids. So I'm challenging each of you to do that with your child by finding out how they learn, thinking about um, what's most important to you as a parent to
Mm-hmm.
have them learn for character, for abilities, for independence,
Right.
for having relationships. Especially,
Hmm.
I know people don't like to think about these either, but what happens after you're gone? So you're
Right.
training. When it comes down to it, really what we're doing is we're training our kids to be able to function and bless others after we're gone. Again,
Absolutely.
I told you I was going to say hard
That's a
things.
great way to summarize that. Yes.
These are hard things. I
Yes.
warned you. But that's
Hmm.
it. You're training them to be as independent as possible, to have a fulfilling life that looks like for their abilities and personality
Right.
and all those God-given
Hmm.
traits, and so that they're a blessing to others, so that when we're gone, there'll be people who really want to take care of them,
Yes. Exactly.
who want to
Yes.
spend time with them, even not take care of them, but just spend time with them. And
Hmm.
uh, so a lot of it, I think a lot of times that's like a whole nother topic we can cover sometime. But
It
I
really
have
is.
I have all these topics. Really, I do. Because there was another one on what did we talk about? Not the behaviors, not incorporating life skills. Let me see. I have a list here. Let me get to the list. Character training for a dysregulated child. So we only have 5 minutes left, so I can't go into that very deeply.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
the dysregulation is what's causing a lot of our problems. Dysregulation just means
Absolutely.
that there's something going on inside the child that's giving them struggles, whether it's learning, socially, physically. There's something going on inside their bodies that's causing dysregulation. One thing I would say in that area is no matter how hard it is for you to deal with all of that, just take a minute and remember it's probably 10 times harder for them.
Absolutely.
I have to remind
Yes. You
myself of
just
that
have to slow down and
when my daughter's
yeah,
having a
be
really
patient.
bad day and a meltdown. I just have to think that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
because one of the biggest struggles I think parents have is figuring out, I know we're not talking about education very much today, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's kind of dawning on you that maybe that's not the most important part of this.
Right.
I will say that teaching your child to read is important for independence purposes, because once they can read on their
Right.
own, it opens up a
Mm-hmm.
whole world to them.
Absolutely.
Don't give up on remediating, but what I like to encourage is that you work on concepts more than,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times these kids are like, remember the kids I talked about, these severely autistic children, hand flapping, verbal tics,
Right.
and all
Yep.
kinds of things. And they had perfectly functioning brains. They just had no way to express it. So think of your
Exactly.
child like that they can take in all these things you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Communication is another important thing. Give them a means to communicate. That can be,
Right.
I'm trying to summarize everything here in these last few
Yeah.
minutes.
Well, and
Give them,
it's just a lot of trial and error and trying to figure out what's going to work, and it may take a really long time. But yeah, like you said, don't give up.
yeah. So
Yeah.
let me go back to the real quick on
Yep.
the, um, the character training on the dysregulated child. So this is one
Yeah.
of the biggest struggles, I think, is figuring out the behavior is dysregulation or disobedience. And the milder the
Mm-hmm.
symptoms, the harder it is to tell. But if you think about
Yeah.
it, obedience training is really about learning governance, which is the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
here.
Right.
And self-modulation is a big part about it. What I mean by self-modulation is getting control of your body, your emotions, all the things
Mm,
that are going inside that are dysregulated, learning how to
right.
modulate those. And sometimes the
Mm-hmm.
kid's not neurologically ready to do
Yeah.
that early on.
Mm,
So it's the long game. Okay, you're playing the long game with self-modulation. But once they
right.
get it, that's one of those milestones that you get to celebrate and say,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yes, because that makes a whole world of difference everywhere. So,
yes.
so absolutely. Yeah. Well, I know there's some questions that we haven't particularly touched on that you all submitted, but we did cover a lot of things related to those. I know we talked about a little bit about retention, that frequency, intensity, duration. We didn't really talk about when you should go back and review, but if you every child, we all need to review. It's always good to review stuff. If you find a curriculum that actually has that built in, saves you that step. So yes, and if a student's struggling in a topic that you have a hard time teaching, find help. I think that was another one Mary had asked, Jane had asked about math. The last one was PSEO, and having a
Yeah.
child who's homeschooled who is neurodivergent and earning college credits. Um, the one thing I'll say about this, and I don't know if you have anything to add, Stephanie, but that child has to be able to operate at a college level to be able to do those classes. They will be provided accommodations, but not modifications. The topic and the course material will not change. So if your child can do that and handle that, they probably wouldn't be in the category that we've been talking to today. But they might be like some of those kids, like Stephanie were talking about, that bridge the gap in the communication area, and then we're able to do that. And those are accommodations, being able to use assistive technology like that. So they can access that just like a regular homeschooler within your state.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't familiar with the term, but I agree, because my son applied to college and he had to pass he didn't take the SAT, so he wouldn't have had those
Right, it's the
scores.
AccuPlacer or whatever college testing.
Well, no, the community college
placement.
had their own entrance exams.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of them use AccuPlacer, but there's
Okay.
others too.
Yeah, I don't remember which one his was, and he didn't pass those, so he couldn't do that. So they
Right.
have fail safes on those so that they don't
Right. They
encourage people to be there who it would be too much of a struggle for.
Right.
The one thing I'll say is I was maybe I should call the group what we call this talk about homeschooling students with severe learning challenges. Maybe I should just call the group that. And what I will do is I will go in and take some of these questions that were asked that we didn't get to, and I can answer them in that group. And if you have,
awesome.
Once the group opens on Saturday, go in and ask any questions you have. Anyone, just start asking the questions, and I will try to help and answer as many of those as I can. If I can't answer them, hopefully we'll have group.
Right, exactly. That's what that peer-to-peer support's all about. It's not all about Stephanie answering all your questions. It's about you guys supporting one another. And I'm so excited for Homeschool Heroes to launch. And if you don't know anything about that, check out our email list. The website will change very late Friday night. I'm not going to say when, but it's already pretty much set up, other than Stephanie's new group and a couple other things that we're still building out. But it will go live on Saturday. And if you are on our email list, which you can subscribe to right now from our current website, a lot of you are already on that list, you will get a code on Friday that you can use to get into the Navigator level, which is a $5 a month level. But you can try it out for free for a couple months, and then see what it's all about, and set up your profile, get your feed all configured, and it's got some amazing technology behind it. So we're super excited for that, and so glad to have you on that, Stephanie.
Thanks. Yeah, and that's where I'll be. I'll be on the Navigator level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so you can set it up. When you set up the group, you can say who has access to it. And so So
I'll be in the Navigator
if you get free access, you sign up for the free access, you actually won't be able to even see Stephanie's group. You actually have to sign up for the Navigator level or higher, which still will be free if you're get that code. So yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Stephanie. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and we always have way more content than we know what to do with. So Stephanie is a co-host on this show, and like you said, you have 2 shows coming up this summer that you've scheduled, and they're not yet on the calendar, but they're getting there soon. So what are those both going to be about?
On July 23rd, I'm interviewing Mary Underwood of What Empty Nest about extended learning, life after high school. And she works with the more mild kids, particularly autism, and she's awesome. And then on August, is it 6th, I think is the date? In early August.
Yeah, it is. It's the first week in August. Yeah.
Okay. The first week in August, I'm interviewing my 3 questions in a mug co-host.
Yes.
She's a functional OT, and she has a wealth of information, and we are going to be talking about the secret to making therapy work. And I'll clue you in. It's frequency, intensity, and duration, along with other things. But that's going to be part of what we're talking about.
They'll get more practical than that. So
the neurology behind that. And then I have one more scheduled after that. I'm praying scripture for your special needs kids.
Yes. I saw that too. I was busy setting things up last night, so later than I should have been. But make sure you visit Stephanie too on her websites, elarplearning.com. That's ELARP learning.com. And that's where you've got those unit studies that you're changing to unit studies or
Currently called
I've been
Teaching Kit.
sending people your way. I know I've gotten
Thank
a
you.
couple phone calls lately, and I'm like, check out Stephanie's website. Is exactly what you want. So definitely look out your resources there, and your other website is artofspecialneedsparenting.com. So great resources, and Stephanie will be here on the show with our co-hosts, as well as hosting some of her own episodes. So exciting.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, and then 2 conferences.
Yes, the conference is coming up. Why don't you talk about those?
So I'll be at the Virginia State Homeschool Convention, HEAV, in Richmond the first weekend of June. I'm going to have a vendor table at the Special Needs Resource Fair, which is the one-day convention for special needs students. And the following day, I will be at the information table for special needs inside the vendor hall, the big vendor hall, answering questions. So you can come up and ask me questions, introduce yourself, tell me how you know me. And Peggy will be there too. And
I
then,
will.
and Peggy will be at the table with me, so we get to see each other in person finally.
Yes,
And then,
yes.
I'll be speaking at the Special Needs Expo in Shelby, North Carolina, the last weekend of June. And if you don't have tickets yet, you still have time to get the $35 discount before the end of the month.
We've been emailing that out to our
that's right.
Our
so you have
email
that on
list.
your thing.
And
So that's
yes,
the one. So I'm teaching there, Peggy's teaching there, and they have a lot of really other good speakers because I'm familiar with a lot of them. So if you're able to travel to that one, I think it would be well worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. So I'll be at those same conferences, and I'll be in Iowa too in between. So
nice.
but I'm looking forward to seeing you. Yes, I'm keynoting the HEAV conference, the special needs one. So that'll be fun. And get to spend some time with all you in the community. So yeah, it's gonna be great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. I appreciate your time, and definitely check out Stephanie's websites, and all the links that she talked about. We'll make sure will be in the show notes so that you can find them there. And thank you all for joining us. Next week, we are going to be talking with Sherry McMinn. She is one of the board of directors at SPED Homeschool. She just wrote a new book about loving your family, a diverse family. And we're going to talk about trauma to triumph, homeschooling in a diverse family. And she is the birth mother of some of her children, an adoptive mother of more children. They've been through a lot. And she has so many lessons to learn on the path that God has taken her and her family on. So you're in for a treat again next week with Sherry. So you'll definitely want to join us for that conversation as well. So thanks again, Stephanie. Appreciate it, and appreciate you and all that you do. Thank you for just pouring yourself out into our community. And I look forward to all the things that you have coming up. Just continued ways to bless so many people. So, and thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time right here on Empowering Homeschool Conversations. God bless.
Thank you.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com